Welcome to the Career Success Secret Show. I am your host, Mike Tomasello. I'm excited to announce we now have listeners from 13 different countries. The new countries that we are welcoming this episode are South Korea, Hong Kong, Croatia, Russia, Colombia, Kenya, and South Africa. Welcome. Regardless of where you're listening around the world, we're glad you're here. We are targeted towards a North America job market and career market, predominantly Canada and the United States. However, I have been helping people around the world with their career for over 20 years now, and many people conducting job searches in other countries outside of North America have told me that the advice I give and provide does indeed work in other countries, and you know your local market better than I do in some cases. I also want to give a quick shout out to Nigeria. If you are listening from Nigeria, you are the country number 2 for most listeners after the United States of America. That's pretty friggin' awesome. I'm glad you're here. A couple things before we jump into our topic for today. And our topic for today is going to be networking, even if you think you hate networking, or networking, even if you think networking's uncomfortable, or networking, even if you don't friggin' have any idea what I mean when I say networking. That's the topic of today. But before I jump into networking, some of you might be at the point of your job search already. We're nearing the end of January as I record this episode. You might be listening to it at a different time. But if you've been working hard in January on your job search and you have not seen an improvement in traction, that is a sign for you to take a step back and really evaluate what is not going right in your job search. And an even better way of looking at it to that is what could be going better in your job search. Because if you're not happy with your results, there's something that you could be doing more effectively or you could be doing better, and you need to identify what that is. So good news is we recorded some episodes on December 20th and also on January 2nd, which are fantastic episodes for taking a step back and really thinking about what are the potential areas within your job search skills that you might be able to tweak, you might be able to improve on, you might be able to learn new skills. So if that's you and your job search is not going that effectively in spite of working really hard, please listen to one, if not both of those episodes. But for this week, we are going to focus on the all-important topic of networking. So although networking can be helpful at any point in one's career, we're going to be talking about networking primarily from a job search perspective. I think will be helpful is to talk about where the word networking comes from. Because when I talk to people in networking, even some really successful people in their careers, I'm finding that the definition of networking has gotten lost. And some people think networking means something entirely different from what it was originally meant to be intended. So let's dive right in. The word networking comes from the word network, and the definition of a network is people or things that are interconnected. I want you to think about that a little bit. People or things that are interconnected. So when you think about some other definitions of networking that are floating out there, maybe you have the image of the slimy person walking around a room, talking to someone for 30 seconds and collecting business cards, pushing out business cards, trying to get sales, begging for favors. If you're doing that, are you really interconnected? Hopefully your answer to that is the same of myself. You aren't interconnected in that situation. And it's not your fault. Some of you have been observing bad networkers for such a long period of time that it's kind of confusing about the right way to do it. Here's a couple ideas for you in terms of what is not necessarily networking. If you are just sending messages to people and you have no relationship with them, or especially if you have no intention of a longer-term relationship with them, you're not really networking. If you are sending a message to someone and ask for a favor right off the bat in the message, you're not networking. If you are creating a social media post or commenting on a social media post, you might be creating an environment that might lead to networking, that might lead to being interconnected, but you're not actually interconnected yet. So I know it's not totally clear what's going on. So let me give you a definition of networking in a different way. Networking is really the art of building relationships and cultivating and nurturing relationships. Okay. So if you only speak with someone once, or you only exchange messages with someone once, you haven't really built a relationship yet. But don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that you never ever send a DM. I'm not saying that at all. Sometimes you have to send a message in order to have the opportunity to start building a relationship. But there's certain things that are going to help with your level of success. So one of those things, and I would argue this is probably the most common mistake that people make in attempting to network, and that's you're reaching out to a complete stranger. I know, counterintuitive, but bear with me. If you are reaching out to a complete stranger, especially if you're asking for something, they don't know who you are. That's very comparable to a salesperson picking a random telephone number, or picking an intentional phone number for that matter, and immediately sending a message selling you something or calling you during dinner time or whatnot. Is that a pleasurable experience for you? My guess is it probably isn't. So what's one of the ways that we can eliminate that stranger issue and still grow our networks at the same time? That strategy recommendation is what I call strong commonalities. Focus on people that you have strong commonalities with. Now, I want you to pay attention to that word strong, because it's not significant enough just to be in the same job field as someone when they're a complete stranger. It's not significant enough to just be in the same industry as someone, because there's such a large group of people that fit that. There's really nothing sort of to bond over. From my research and my testing thousands and thousands of times with different connection types and commonality types, these are the strongest commonalities that I've determined work the best. People you already know. That's a commonality. People that know people that you know. Next best commonality. So as you can probably imagine, getting referrals, getting introductions from people that you already know. Powerful, because it's very unique and it's someone that they already know. Probably self-explanatory, but I wanted to share that with you anyway. Good news, even if you don't know a lot of people, some additional strong commonalities that are going to be helpful for you. Any university that you have ever gotten a degree from. Some of you listening might have 2 degrees, but even if you only have 1 degree, even if you went to a small school in a different part of the world or a different part of the country, every single alum that has a degree potentially will bond with you over the fact that you went to the same university. Anyone that is the same nationality as you, if you are no longer living in that nation. If you are no longer living in that nation. An example I frequently give, if you are Nigerian and you're currently living in the United States, a strong commonality to bond over is other Nigerians that are also living in the United States. If you are a Canadian living in the United States, every other Canadian, probably a good chance that you will bond over the fact that you are not from this country. You're an American, you're from the United States. If you are working internationally or want to work internationally, much easier for an American to bond with other random Americans outside of the United States. So if you're an American within the United States, you can't really use this one, but there's plenty of other stuff on the list. So if you have ever served in the military, that is a strong commonality. They don't even have to have served in the same military branch as you. So Army, Navy, Marines, Air Force, Coast Guard, if you have served in the military, that is a strong commonality that you can reach out to as an excuse to reach out to other people that have served in the military. And then last but not least, I don't think I missed too many, any nonprofits or charities that you have raised money for or that you have volunteered for. Anyone that has also volunteered or raised money for a charity likely has a very strong emotional connection with that. And again, that's something that you can potentially bond over. Now, occasionally I will have someone come to me and say, Mike, I don't really fit into any category. What do I do? And I would say, well, you have at least one or two categories. And the one or two categories is every human being on the planet knows at least a few people. Actually, studies have shown that the average person in the United States, the average person in North America, knows at least 150 people. So all 150 people are part of your network. And all of those 150 people know at least another 150 people, even if they've never left their metropolitan area, even if they've never studied elsewhere, stuff like that. So chances are, I'm really bad at math, but I believe it would be 150 times 150 is the minimum size of your network. So that would be the minimum. If you want to expand that network easily, especially if you don't want to go to any events or any virtual events or stuff like that, I would say I recommend volunteering for a nonprofit or an international nonprofit. Sometimes people come back to me and they're like, Mike, I don't really want to do that, or I don't have time to do that. And I would say, well, if you don't have any network at all, or you have a very small network, you don't have the luxury of not doing that. But here's the cool thing about volunteering. Most nonprofits are so desperate for volunteers. There are one-time opportunities where you can volunteer for a few hours or a day or a weekend. So the moment you volunteer for one day, you are a part of that alumni network of that nonprofit. So don't let that get in the way of you not expanding your network. Last but not least, I didn't think of a commonality that I forgot to mention. It's not as strong as the other ones, but it absolutely can work. And that is people that you have met in person. People that you have met in person. So how does that differ from the other categories, from the people you know? Well, I'm not forcing you to do this, but if your network is small, you can simply go to in-person meetups, virtual meetups, in-person events, virtual events, and anyone that you have a conversation with for 2 to 5 minutes is now part of your network, or more accurately, you now have that strong commonality with them, where if you keep in touch with them and you follow up with them, they become part of your network. So I'd love to know your thoughts on strong commonalities. If you figured out what your strong commonalities are for you, I'd love for you to drop those in the comments and let me know. If you have questions around commonalities, I would love to know those as well. Other common mistake that I see in networking, and it's such a common mistake that it's actually confusing really successful people about the definition of networking. And that's some people are making the mistake of thinking networking is transactional. You might be reaching out to people, you might be going to events, the events might even be called networking events, but if you're not building a relationship with someone that has the potential for long term, you're not actually networking. We'll talk about some of the ways to do that today in this episode. But I'd love to hear your thoughts and questions in terms of what you think that looks like and what sort of works for you and what doesn't work for you. In an ideal relationship or in an ideal networking relationship, both parties are getting value. Both parties are getting value. So if you're approaching someone and it's all about you or all about your job search, you're probably going to struggle being successful in networking. Now, here's the cool thing. The other party getting value, the other person that's getting value, it doesn't have to be the same thing in return. It doesn't have to be money, doesn't have to be a career opportunity for them. The value you provide in return could be information. So, for example, we talked about being from the same home country or being alums of the same university. Well, the information you can exchange is information about what's going on in your home country. Or for you students out there listening to this, getting ready for your internships, what's that information about what's going on back at the university that the older, more experienced alum might not be aware of? Information exchange. Regardless of your age, you can be sharing information that you're learning in your other conversations and relationships that you're building, whether new relationships or old relationships or whatnot. So information sharing is value that pretty much anyone, as long as you set the intention, can potentially be doing. The other really powerful value thing that anyone can do is the value of helping someone else feel good. The value of helping someone else feel good. So if someone meets you or someone has a conversation with you, whether they've known you for a week, a month, a year, a decade, if someone comes away from a conversation with you and they feel joy or they feel pride or they feel gratitude, you've given them the gift, you've given them the value of helping them feel a positive emotion. That can be really powerful and that can really make you memorable, and that will make people want to help you even more. Coincidentally, one of the easiest ways that you can help people feel good is by giving them the opportunity to help you. Not everyone's going to take you up on it, but if you approach things from I'm looking to learn and I'm looking to get advice from you, Mr. Potential Connection, or Mr. Ex-Boss that I haven't talked to in 2 years, or Ms. Ex-Classmate that I haven't caught up with in a while, or hey, old professor or new professor or current professor. If you ask them for the opportunity to learn and get advice from them, and they say yes, that's an opportunity for them to share their wisdom, their expertise, and the fact you value their expertise almost always is going to make them feel good. And they won't accept if it's not likely to make them feel good. So really easy ways to give value. And the more you get to know someone, the more you build a stronger relationship with them, the more you'll be able to think of even more specific and even more valuable ways to give back to them or give value to them. There you go. Some other things about building relationships. So building relationships should be genuine. And so I get that you're looking for a job. I get that you're looking to up-level your career, but you got to care about the other people at the same time. I'm not saying that they need to be the most important person in your life. I'm not saying that they need to be important as your loved ones in your life, but I'm saying, should you be interested in them having a positive experience? Absolutely. And that might be challenging for some of you, and I get that. But the more you turn on that caring and gets. We're not forgetting about our own needs. It's not that we're not trying to learn and grow and advance in our careers, but we care about the individual that's across from us, and that makes this whole deal a heck of a lot easier. The next thing I wanted to talk about is people will come to me and say, Mike, I'm super busy, or this job search is burning me out. And then the big one, I just don't have time for networking. It takes too much time. And what I would say to you, if you think that way, is unless you're getting significant results in the job search already, you can't afford not to network. You can't afford not to make the time, because networking, specifically building relationships, makes everything else easier and accelerates everything else. So there might be a couple extra actions. You might have to send a couple extra messages. You might have to have one or two verbal conversations or in-person meetups that weren't otherwise on your action list or your timeline. Here's the thing. If you are referred in or you are introduced to someone that knows the hiring manager, or you are introduced to someone that knows the recruiter, or you are introduced to someone that works on the team or works with the hiring manager, even if not directly, you have the potential to jump to the front of the line and skip a lot of the waiting that other people have. Your resume is 10 to 20 times more likely to be seen. Your LinkedIn, 10 to 20 times more likely to be seen. Sometimes you're able to skip interviews and skip directly to the hiring manager when referred in. Sometimes you don't have to do a recruiter or an HR interview. I'm not saying that's always the case where you're able to skip this stuff, but it does happen. And it does happen sometimes. Sometimes they've already selected 10 people they want to interview, and you applied a little late. And if you don't have that introduction in, they're not going to make the exception and interview an 11th person. But if you know someone, if you've built a relationship with someone, you're that much more likely to be an exception. People that build relationships tend to find out about job openings before they're even posted. So if you have a strong relationship with someone, whether it be their employer or whether it be someone that they know, when they first hear of something, someone that they know well, or someone that's stayed in contact with them, they're going to be a lot more likely to think of you and want to let you know about that opening before anyone else. So there's a lot of extra benefits to networking. Here's another one that's not often talked about. I often get the question from job searchers, I have a history of working for toxic bosses, or I have a history of working in toxic environments. How can I find out early on, or how can I find out before applying what companies, what managers, what bosses, what departments are the good ones and which ones are toxic? And one of the best, if not the best way, is through networking and asking your network about that boss, asking your network about that team. And your network can be these people that you just met, that you have strong commonalities with, the people you've built relationships with that are further along in their career than you are going to have the inside information in terms of which companies are better to work for. If you're not having those conversations, you're actually increasing the likelihood that you're applying for jobs that don't have the best bosses, that aren't the best places to work. So highly, highly recommend that you learn the art of networking and learn how to get even better at it. So sometimes people will say, well, Mike, I've done a lot of networking and I'm still not having success. And I would say, go back to the list that I revealed with you earlier. And are you attempting to network with strangers, or are you really networking around strong commonalities? Are you making things transactional, and are you jumping very quickly to getting job leads? Or are you asking people questions that help people feel valued? Are you focusing on learning and building the relationship? Because another danger of going directly to the job lead is if the job doesn't end up working out, especially if you don't get an interview, now you've hit a dead end because you made it all about getting that one particular job opening, and now the relationships hit a dead end. But if you had focused on learning and getting advice and building the relationship, you would have had a phone conversation or an in-person meet and strengthened the relationship by hearing each other's voices. If you had focused on the relationship, you might have learned about more companies in the area that are hiring around positions that are even better for you. You might have learned about different teams or departments within the company that you might not even realize also hire or also have that same type of position. You might have missed out on the opportunity to get introduced to 5 or 6 different hiring managers for more advice and more relationships, but you only focused on one job opening. So it really exponentially increases the opportunity for you to get known, for you to uncover opportunities, and exponential growth and exponential people looking for you is the best possible result that I can think of. I think you're starting to get a picture of how networking, particularly relationship building, is going to save you time, and it's going to maximize the chances that you work for a company that or a team that's really going to fill you up, that's going to be fulfilling for you, that's going to maximize your chances. Here's another benefit. It's worth it to continue to network and to build relationships, even if you're getting interviews without it. If it's close between you and someone else, someone who works within the company is probably going to be able to give you some pretty good inside information in terms about what the manager might care about. Or even if they don't know the manager directly, to give you information around what's important to the company, their products, their services, how their business model works. So much information can be uncovered through relationships that you're not necessarily going to find online. They can give you advice in terms of what answers and techniques they use to get into the company. And last but not least, if you do get the interview and you didn't network in, you'll often lose out to someone who did network in, who did have a relationship in. Because if it's close between you and someone else, even if you're awesome, even if you're good enough to do the job, even if you're a great candidate, if it's close between you and that other person, oftentimes that relationship, it's not really a nepotism thing, as I've heard some of my friends talk about lately. It's more of a peace of mind thing and a trust thing. Hopefully this person's going to work for me for 2 years, or maybe even 3 years, or maybe even 5 years, or even if they work for me for one year, working with me for 40 hours a week, 4 weeks every month. Am I going to trust someone who also knows someone that knows me? Am I going to trust someone who also knows someone that was referred in or potentially even recommended by someone that works for the company already? That's an increased sense of trust. And even if it's referred in by someone that you only spoke to for 20 minutes. So don't discount that. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on networking. Please reach out to me. Please let me know what your questions are. And depending on what I hear, I will totally see if I can create some more content for you to clarify some of this stuff for you. But if you focus on learning and building the relationship and getting advice and getting introductions, not referrals. We're so quick to get referrals, we hit that dead end. But if we keep getting introductions to people in our field, if we just keep getting introductions to people that are hiring managers, we're eventually going to know so many hiring managers that we're going to have an army of hiring managers that are either creating openings for ourselves or introducing us to other hiring managers and keeping their eyes open for us. So that's it for this week. I'd love to hear what you thought about the episode. Please, we're still kind of new as a show. Every subscribe, every 5-star rating, every even 2 or 3 word comments means the world to us. The faster we can get up to 50, the faster we can let these platforms know that we are a show that they should be sharing to other people, because it's all about us getting the word out and helping as many people around the world as possible. If you can help me by doing one or all of those 3 things, if you can help me by telling one person you know about the show, I will be most grateful. That's it for this week. I am your host, Mike Tomasello. Thanks for listening to the Career Success Secret Show.